The trail leading to Wedge Mountain Lake and the summit of Mount Wedge, located near Whistler in Garibaldi Provincial Park, British Columbia, Canada, is considered one of the most beautiful in the area, but also quite challenging for unprepared hikers. You will gain over 1,300 meters in elevation, over 5 kilometers, until you reach a designated camping area. The trail starts with a relatively easy section, but soon turns into a steep climb that's often compared to a grueling workout. Most of the route goes through dense forest, where you'll find many clear streams where you can always replenish your water supply. Along the way, you'll encounter several open spots where you can see a huge waterfall flowing from the very lake, where many people love to camp. At 1,700 meters, the terrain changes to open rocks and small sandy slopes that you'll need to ascend. This is also a great viewpoint overlooking the valley below, which is the direction we're heading. We stopped for a brief rest to take in the details. However, it's best not to linger in the sun for too long and continue the ascent. In the first half of the day, the trail remains entirely in the shade, which makes this section easier. But it's the toughest part with a slope angle of 67 degrees. After that, the route enters the Alpine zone, where you won't find any shade except for small rock outcroppings. I make sure to protect myself from the scorching sun with whatever I can to avoid getting sunburned. On average, the climb to the lake takes about 3 hours, depending on whether you're hiking for the day, staying overnight, or continuing up to the peaks. The most comfortable time to hike is during the summer, from mid-June to the end of September. Outside this period, there's a lot of snow, but if you're well prepared, you can still enjoy this route in winter. On clear days, the valley offers a stunning view of the mountain range and the glacier descending from the peaks. Nearly every peak has a marked route on apps for phones or GPS devices. I should note that the lake sits at an elevation of 1,900 meters. The surrounding area is well maintained, so you can have a great time. There are many prepared wooden platforms for setting up tents, but they are often occupied by those who arrived earlier. Don't worry if you can't find a designated spot. Just lower down, closer to the water, there are plenty of flat ground spots. Personally, I prefer setting up my tent there, as the wind isn't as strong in the valley. When staying overnight, be sure to tightly seal and store your food away from your tent. Or better yet, hang it in a designated spot. You may have unexpected visitors, including small rodents, waterfowl, and even black bears, which are frequent guests in the area. If you don't provoke the bear, avoid getting too close and stay out of its path. Your encounter will likely end with little more than some nervous excitement. Our plan today is to set up camp, take a short break, and after an hour, head further up to the glacier and explore the central route leading to the summit. The well-trodden trail to the glacier takes about 40 minutes at a steady pace. If you're here for a rest without continuing to the summit, I recommend heading to the glacier, as it's one of the few places where you can easily get close to ancient ice and enjoy the beauty of shallow caves and ice grottos, from which streams of water flow in the heat. If you decide to go inside, be extremely cautious, as rocks and chunks of ice frequently fall from the glacier. Always wear a helmet and microspikes for your safety. On the way to the glacier, you'll pass another smaller lake that didn't exist about 30 years ago. But due to global warming, the glacier is retreating further each year. There are also several spots for camping here, but all the streams flowing from the glacier contain impurities, so it's best to use a water filter. Behind this peak lies Mount Wart, and just to the left, Mount Cook, to which one of the routes leads. We stay right on the main trail. Not long ago, there was an ice cave here, but the upper part collapsed just a month ago. This video from last year shows the cave, which was about 20 meters long and 3 meters high dot.
Это сверху по леднику, это сверху по леднику.
And this is all that remains of it. We don't linger by the remnants of the cave, gear up, and continue upwards. In early September, the glacier is fully exposed and all the cracks are clearly visible. We proceed in a roped team for safety. There are several large crevasses here filled with meltwater, but most of them are no deeper than 5 meters. Fresh snow can fall from mid-September, making progress more difficult due to hidden crevasses, so you'll likely need to use a probe. At the moment, we easily bypass or step over these crevasses as we move forward. From this point, there are 3 main routes to the summit of Mount Wedge. The first goes along the eastern ridge. The second heads west around the mountain. And the central one, which is our path today. Which route is better depends on individual preference. I know the central route is easier in winter when the crevasses are hidden under a thick layer of snow, but today we want to see how accessible it is during the warm season. It's shorter than the other routes, and most of the way can be climbed on smooth ice if you find a path over the icefall. In contrast, the eastern ridge involves scrambling over sharp rocks, while the western route takes a longer detour around the mountain. After walking about 50 meters along the ice wall, we find a good spot to ascend higher. Due to the steep angle, the sun only hits this part of the slope for a few hours before sunset, but it heats up the glacier, causing vertical ice formations to move down under their own weight. After moving a little further, we hit a dead end. Below us, there's a large drop, so we can't proceed across to the opposite side of the wall. We decide to descend lower and search for another spot where we can climb smoothly up the ice to avoid large seracs. We climb slowly because of issues with the crampons, carefully making each step. We're using crampons with a soft attachment system on our hiking boots, which are great for horizontal movement, but not ideal for slopes greater than 40 degrees. The crampons sometimes slip off when trying to dig the boot into the ice, which is inconvenient and unsafe, especially since we don't have any belay stations. If we had brought ice screws for belay stations, this section would be much easier, and it's better to climb in the morning when the ice is frozen overnight.
Coming!
Right now, it's 3 p.m., and the snow and ice are turning into slush. The sun makes them brittle. After a huge chunk of ice breaks off, we decide that it's enough for today. There's no safe way to proceed from here. Go down again and follow the tracker that is 300 meters to the right of us. This is a good decision, but not for today. If we make another attempt, we'll still have over 600 meters of ascent to the summit. We'll be descending late at night in the dark, which isn't ideal for this route. So we calmly descend back to camp and will head west towards the summit tomorrow. But first, let's take a quick look at each route. The green line marks the westward route where we plan to go. The yellow line shows where we hit a dead end and a glacier. The orange line marks our second attempt to find a pass, which is when a block of ice broke off. The purple line is the central route. As you can see on the map, we went much further left, thinking it would be easier to get there. And the red line is the trail leading up the northeast ridge, joining the central route above. The next day, we woke up at 6 a.m. out early. Besides the two of us, no one else was visible near the other tents. This means we won't meet anyone higher up, whether going up or down. The evening before, I counted about 19 groups simply resting in the valley and probably not planning to ascend. We now have to cross the entire glacier along the western route to reach the south side of the slope. As we move forward, I get the feeling we're walking on a completely different glacier. Because, aside from a slight breeze and the crunching ice underfoot, it's completely silent. And it is on the surface. The temperature is below freezing, and all the water is frozen overnight. So, we don't hear any bubbling streams. Today, we're moving separately, not roped together, staying away from the big crevasses. Underfoot, the cracks are narrow and shallow, posing no danger. An hour later, the sun starts peeking over the ridge, lighting up the slopes. As its rays warm the ice, it turns into a surging surface with huge streams rushing down, forming lakes of varying sizes. At one of these lakes, we top up our water supply for the day. Here, we can take off our crampons. We've crossed the entire glacier to the other side, and from here on, it will be all boulders up to the peak.
Ну вот оно еще туда проверим хочет.
The massive walls surrounding us capture all your attention, often making us stop to appreciate the natural beauty around. After descending, we continue around the mountain through a boulder field. On this side, there are several vertical routes along the wall, which are better tackled in the colder seasons with ropes. Right now, rocks are constantly falling, so we keep our distance. The easy part of the route is behind us. It took us 2.5 hours to cover the 4 kilometers from the campsite to where we are now. From this point, a sharp climb begins. First, we have to ascend along the black rocks, and then sharply turn left towards the Wedge Peak. It is very difficult to move around this part. The snow clears the slopes for a short time, and everything crumbles from under your feet. We have to check each rock before stepping up. After the solitary rock pillar, it gets easier, with larger rock outcrops that we have to bypass on either the right or left. We still have 1,100 meters to go, gaining 800 meters in elevation. The slope along the black wall took us 1.5 hours to pass, and on this stretch, up to 2,800 meters. The average gradient is 45 degrees. But there are sections where it's as steep as 60 degrees, so the final kilometer won't be easy. This rock is wrapped in old ropes. From here, another route leads down the Wedge Couloir route. It meets the trail we're climbing, which we walked along below. I'm not sure when someone last descended that way, but without ropes and full climbing gear, it's impossible to pass. The height of the couloir is 570 meters. We take a 10-minute break. The weather is comfortable. At sea level, it's 26 degrees Celsius today. It is the last warm weekend of the year. At this height, it's 17 degrees Celsius with a light breeze. So the temperature difference is about 10 degrees Celsius for every kilometer of elevation. In just another 100 meters vertically, we'll finally reach a flatter ridge that leads to the summit. There's a small flat spot here for a tent if you plan to camp at this elevation. From here, it's just 400 meters to go. Our goal is now in direct view. The climb from the campsite to the Wedge summit along the western route took us 5 hours.
О. Два 903. Wedge Mountain. Дошли.
Wedge Mountain, with an elevation of 2,903 meters, is the highest peak in Garibaldi Provincial Park and the third tallest among the outstanding mountains in southwest British Columbia. Ski Hist Mountain is 65 meters taller than Wedge, and Whitecap Mountain is only 15 meters higher. The first ascent of Wedge was made by Jeff Mumford and Ed Zenger in 1974 via the Northeast Wall. In 1980, Peter Kurzanowski made the first ski descent of the Western Couloir. The mountain offers several routes for every season and is one of the easiest and most accessible mountains in Western Canada. However, it is far from safe, as with any mountain. So, remember that it's best to have basic skills and gear before heading here. On most summits, there's a small box where you can mark your visit with the date of your ascent in a notebook. By checking the entries, you can see who climbed it and when, as well as which route they took and what challenges they faced. As I mentioned earlier, the weather is warm today. We've been at the summit for an hour and a half, and no one else has come up. We're enjoying our time, taking in the views, and of course, snapping some commemorative photos. From the top, we spot an easier descent down the snow tongue and decide to take that route instead of going down the loose rocks along the Black Cliff. I recommend that future climbers take this route for both the ascent and descent if you have crampons and an ice axe. You'll need to walk an extra 300 meters to the side, but in the end, you'll save time and minimize the risk of rocks falling on you from above. The warm season is coming to an end, and the first snow is expected next weekend. This means that from now on, you need to factor in precipitation, either snow at higher elevations or rain down in the valley. As a result, crevasses will begin to fill in, slowing your progress until enough snow accumulates to form a thick layer. Our journey is coming to an end, and yet another mountain is added to our list of summits. I wish everyone good luck and new heights to conquer.